Welcome everyone. My name is Doreen. I'm president of Amnesty International chapter at the Monterey or Middlebury Institute. Thanks for coming here. This is the event just to make sure that you know where you are. This is a panel discussion on youth incarceration. So if you were not planning on attending, still don't leave the room. It's going to be very, very interesting. We have amazing panelists here. Thanks for supporting us, for supporting such an important cause to discuss. One more Danny. And I'm giving up the floor to our moderator today, Dr. Jen Black from the Monterey Institute. Some of you probably know her. Amazing, tremendous work. So if you take it from here. Okay.
I'm the sponsor of the Amnesty Club, and so I guess from that, many of you would gather that human rights is my field. I've taught everything but higher math over the course of my career, but human rights is what really pulls it all together for me. And I'm on the board of Amnesty now in my second, Amnesty International USA in my second term. We have adopted, we've recently elected a new executive director and taken a new theme, a new trajectory, which we're calling Bringing Human Rights Home. And I think it was high time that we began to look at what was happening right all around us. And one of the things that, is not to be missed is the problem of mass incarceration. In fact, the politicians and pundits in the United States are so prone to talk about how the United States is number one. We're always number one. Well, sometimes that's not the good news. Being number one in global levels of incarceration is not the good news. But there is good news, and that's that we're beginning to do something about it. And that's what really gives us some momentum for this kind of program, and we hope to get all of you excited about thinking about what might be done to rethink and reform this really terribly broken system. I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'll do a little shortcutting on the bio notes that I have here because I want to give folks more time to speak. They've been asked to speak for about 5 minutes each, and I think what I hope we'll be able to do is to look at this issue of the problem of incarceration and the challenge of what can be done about it, and be able to just talk a little bit about what you have seen personally, what you have worked on, what you've learned from your experience in it, and therefore what you think these young people would most need to know to be able to carry forward our goals in all of this, if that works. And then we'll bring in the audience. I'll start just as my list goes with Jackie Simon, whom I've known for many years in many ways. She has her own company, a business development consultant group. That's the day job, or one of the many day jobs. But for our purposes here, what is of greater interest is that she's the founder of a program called Transitions for Recovery and Reentry. And she has degrees in community corrections, in administration and counseling, and certificates in many things, many areas that are relevant to what we're talking about here today, but particularly transitional life skills. She has received commendations from Senator Feinstein for her entrepreneurialism, and from Sam Farr and Bill Manning, our wonderful, wonderful representatives here, for her work in transitions. And she's also a member of the Juvenile Hall and Juvenile Center Real Choices program, in which she teaches life skills training and mentorship and entrepreneurship for youth at risk particularly. Then James Newhouse he was trained in economics at the University of California, Santa Barbara. And he has a doctorate in jurisprudence from the University of California at Berkeley. Has 40 years of experience in criminal trial practice.
50.
Oh, 50.
Thank you for the compliment.
Wow. Boy, time flies, doesn't
It
it?
does, yeah, but
Okay, well, I'm sure this figure is a little off too then, but it's more than 300 jury trials in state and federal courts throughout California, and also district courts in Washington, Utah, and Nevada. He has reached the rank of super lawyer. He has been included in a listing, sort of who's who, as super lawyer for at least 5 years. So, and has had experience in working with white collar crime and drug offenses, as well as general violent crimes and murder and domestic violence. So he has a tremendous range of experience. And Julia Reynolds. I'm just embarrassed that I haven't taken greater advantage of learning more, hearing more of your stories. She has been with us for a while as a criminal justice reporter at the Monterey County Herald and with the Center for Conflict Resolution. And but you know, her background is just blows your mind. She has had fellowships with San Jose State University and with Harvard University. With Harvard in 2009, she worked on a documentary that was an award-winning PBS documentary called Nuestra Familia that grew out of the experience of being immersed with rural gang members over a period of 11 years. And she has reported particularly on gangs and their FBI informants. That must have been interesting. For the Chronicle and also the Oakland Tribune and the Monterey Herald. And she has investigated con artists, narco-traffickers, money launderers, sociopaths, arms smugglers, corrupt government informants, and a CIA asset. Wow. And she's worked with, well, and now, she's worked with Bill Moyers. One of my great loves is Bill Moyers. And on National Public Radio, 60 Minutes, The Nation, and other outlets. And has been a reporter for the Center for Investigative Reporting. I missed the second page. Maybe you can feel it. There's a little bit more about that. But at any rate, she has a relatively new book that just came out in 2014 that's called Blood in the Fields. I think some of you will have heard about that. There has been a good bit of publicity about it, having to do with the fate and challenges for women farm workers in the field. And our fourth speaker, I didn't have a bio note for, and so we've just gotten acquainted, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then go ahead and speak, and then the rest of you can in turn, and then we'll open the floor.
Right.
Okay?
My name is William Muniz, and I'm the acting warden at Salinas Valley State Prison. And the acting really has a lot to do with the fact that I have not been yet appointed by Governor Brown. So that process is in the making and nearing, but it's still his call, and he hasn't done it yet. And for those of you who are paying attention, I am a note taker, so I am taking notes. I'm not playing Angry Birds or whatever. I don't know what they're doing. I don't do that stuff, and I'm not texting. I want you to know I like to take advantage of keeping notes on what goes on. Briefly, I started in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation in 1994. Since this is an interesting group of people, I have no idea really what many of your interests are. I will let you know that the title of warden kind of sounds like an interesting and sometimes it perplexes me, the title of warden and what that exactly means. But about 21 years ago, I entered into the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation with the interest of being a correctional officer. I was previously in the world of construction and didn't really have any interest, honestly, in working in corrections. And so years ago, I did have an inmate call me an economic refugee, and I accepted. I said, yeah, I asked him to explain that. He said, you couldn't make it in the real world, so you got a job here. And I accepted that. So that was 21 years ago. I did not anticipate, quite honestly, that one day I would be a warden. And so as I progressed through the ranks, I started at the Correctional Training Facility in CTF Soledad back in '94. It was the only prison right there on the Soledad grounds. In 1996, they activated the new institution of Salinas Valley State Prison, which is a level 4 maximum security. I did promote there in '98. I didn't go over immediately, but I did promote in '98 as the sergeant with an interest in getting some level 4 experience, and then going back to what I knew and was more comfortable with. Found a home, stayed there, promoted to lieutenant, captain, associate warden, chief deputy warden, and now warden acting. So my experience in law enforcement and the criminal justice system began when my career began. So I did not come into the world of criminal justice as somebody who found that to be of interest, who wanted to change a process or was for or against crime or criminals in any kind of way, shape, or form. I had a young family to feed, and I got a job. So my perspective is unique because I feel like over the last 20 plus years now, I have evolved my understanding of corrections. I've evolved in my understanding of what works and what doesn't work. I've evolved in a lot of different ways, and I think a good person does a lot of self-awareness, self-examination, and grows and changes with what they become familiar with. And if I were to look at some of the things that I saw 20 years ago with the lens that I have now, I think I might see them differently. And so it's been a really interesting maturation process for myself. One of the things about becoming a warden is that you really have to keep your record very clean. And interestingly enough, they run your credit score. Didn't know that. And it's a good thing to keep your credit score good, trust me. It's really important. I didn't realize it would be important to the position. And honestly, I never saw my position as something that was political in any way, shape, or form, but at this point in my career, that is strangely turned extremely political. And so I'm guided by some really basic principles about what I believe to be right. I have entered into the prison and seen a lot of things that really perplexed me. And I think my understanding of that now is that I didn't grow up in that kind of environment. I didn't grow up in a dysfunctional home. I didn't grow up in a bad neighborhood. I wasn't exposed to crime. I wasn't exposed to gangs. And so I was a very domestic little guy who stepped into the correctional world. And I have learned and confronted a lot of issues. And my understanding of what we do in corrections has grown and has changed over a period of time. And I'm sure many of you may have questions about that, but I am limited to 5 minutes. So I'm going to try to keep to that. And so in terms of understanding where I work, we have approximately 3,585 inmates today at Salinas Valley State Prison. The majority of those are doing some long sentences. About half of them are doing life or better. We have high rate of incidence compared to other prisons in the state, and that's mostly the result of gang influence on inmates in the system. And it's a very powerful fear for inmates to have to deal with. And I have had the privilege of seeing a lot of rehabilitative type experiences in the prison, but they're really limited by fear. And so trying to address that is quite the task. My personal endeavor right now is to make an impact on prison culture and to aspire to rehabilitative services. And I can tell you that not at all times during my career was I espoused to the notion of rehabilitation. And not everyone inside the prison system who works there is there either, and there's some really predictable reasons for that. And if I get a chance later, I'd like to speak a little bit to some of the things that actually occur inside the person whose job it is to keep peace and safety inside the prison, and how that affects the human body, and then some of the predictable outcomes as a result. They're not necessary, but when you're aware of them, you can take steps to not be affected the way it can affect you. I've seen staff who I worked with lose their families through divorce. I have seen some of them aspire to greatness in the department and beyond. I have seen others commit suicide. And so the reaction to that environment is varied, and it's a difficult environment. It's not just difficult for the staff, it's obviously difficult for the inmates. And if you allow the environment to affect you, it can potentially leave you in a lower place than when you got in. I'd like to think that I'm in a higher place than when I got in, but I suppose I'm probably not the judge of that. My wife will tell you I am, so I think that's what matters. I've been with her for dating and marriage for 32 years.
Wow.
And she says I'm a better person today than when I got in. So, that's all I'll say about that. I'm sure there'll be questions later for other things. I'll leave it at that. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. So we'll just move on and call for questions after the initial presentation.
My name's Jim Newhouse. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I have been a criminal defense attorney since 1966. I've never practiced any other kind of law, and I frankly don't know any other kind of law. When I was called to sit on this panel, I really was somewhat perplexed as to why they wanted a working criminal defense attorney on the panel when we're talking about incarceration. I suppose I ought to be against it, because my clients are all against it. But like any good trial lawyer, when you're really in doubt as to what you ought to say or how you ought to address your audience, what you ought to do is tell a couple of war stories. So I'll tell you a couple, because it does relate to this subject matter. In 1973, I think it was 72 or 73, I had been out of the public defender's office in Alameda County for about 3 years. And I was in private practice, and I was appointed to defend a capital case, death penalty case. And my client, I'll just use his first name for reasons that will become apparent a little later. His name was Danny. And his brother, he and his brother Larry decided to commit a crime. Danny had been a college graduate. He's about 25, 26 years old. He's black. He was a football player, a linebacker. He played in the Canadian Football League for a couple of years for the Toronto Argonauts. They cut him. He was out of work, down on his luck. He and his brother were in Berkeley. And they decided to stick up a supermarket. And they stuck up a supermarket, and a 22-year-old clerk got killed when Larry's gun went off, either accidentally or intentionally. It's never been clear. But anyhow, they killed him. And they were charged with first-degree murder, probably murder, and the district attorney was seeking the death penalty. The district attorney was a real experienced, tough guy named Frank Dakota, famous prosecutor in Alameda County, never lost a case. Had never lost a death penalty case. We started picking a death-qualified jury. If, for those of you who don't know, death penalty is a two-phase trial. You try the defendant's guilt, and then the same jury comes back if they find him guilty, and they decide whether he should live or die. And so you have to pick what's called a death qualified jury, which means 12 people who could, if it was appropriate, give the death penalty. So anybody who is unalterably opposed to death penalty, morally opposed, whatever, doesn't get to sit. So you got to pick 12 people who you know. When you pick them, you got to pick the best of a bunch of people who are willing to kill somebody for his crime. It's not an easy job. Well, we start picking a jury, and Rose Bird's court, Rose, by the way, was a classmate of mine at Bolton. Rose Bird's court declares the death penalty unconstitutional on the second day of jury selection. So, judge says, hey, death penalty is unconstitutional, what do you guys want to do? DA says, well, we got a jury, let's proceed. No, they said, we got a death qualified jury. Let's start over, we'll pick a new jury. So now we get a free ride, so we do. Jurors all excused, we get a new jury, we don't death qualify. But right now, this is like a battery case. I mean, the guilt of the defendants is slam dunk. They got videos, they got a confession, they got their gun. They're going to get convicted of first-degree murder, but they're not looking at the death penalty. And they're not looking at life without possibility of parole because there was no such thing at that time. They're looking at life, which means they're eligible for parole like any other lifer. Well, they get convicted. And Danny gets sent to Soledad. And Danny's a bright guy, and there's a doctor at Soledad who is a radiologist, and he gets, and he'd done some paramedic stuff when he was in college. They put him in the medical facility. And this doctor takes Danny under his wing and teaches him to be a radiologist technician. And Danny did 17 years. Nowadays, if you get convicted of first-degree murder, even if it's not life without, which is the penalty, you ain't getting out. If you do first-degree murder, you're not getting out. Danny got out after 17 years. And the reason I knew that he got out, because I lost track of him, was I was in the process of getting ready to try another death penalty case in this county, which is the rest of the story. And Danny drops by my office, sees my name on the sign, leaves the car, it says, I'm now working at Dominican Hospital, I'm the chief radiology technician, give me a call. And he had read in the paper that I was trying this rather prominent death penalty case here. So I called him. And Danny, what happened? He tells me this story, and I said, you know, I want to use you because my guy is, I mean, I'll tell you the facts of the case that we're trying, but I don't believe in the death penalty, but if I did, he's the guy who would get it. And so I want to call Danny in the penalty phase to test it because I got to give the jury a reason not to give him death. Here's Danny, you know, he would have been on death row, but for the fact that the court got rid of the death penalty, and now he's a radiology technician at Dominican Hospital, married with a couple of kids, nice apartment. And Danny volunteers, yeah, I'll tell my story. You get the judge to let me testify in the penalty phase. Because my defense is basically Joe had a heart, my new client Joe Mitchell, his name is, had been raised, he had a tough life. Not because he was raised in the ghetto, he was raised by a fairly well-to-do guy who was on the planning commission. He was a planning commissioner for building and whatever, building commission, guys who would give you permits to build. His father was employed by the city of Monterey and was an elder in the Jehovah's Witness Church. And Joe's deprivation when he was a kid is his father was a total hypocrite. He was an elder in the church, he had to follow all the church rules. He was a big guy, 6'4", 240, good athlete, could have played football at Seaside High, but his father wouldn't let him play because He's a Jehovah's Witness, you can't wear a uniform. That's one of the tenets of the church. His father, in the meantime, was coaching a Pop Warner football team who wore uniforms. It was that kind of guy. And so anyhow, I tell my client, Joe Mitchell, and I'll tell you a little bit about the crime so you know why he's a death penalty candidate. He had 4 or 5 prior violent felonies, robberies, a couple of assaults. He'd been to prison 4 times. He'd never been out of prison for more, or jail for more than 30 days since he was 20 years old, when he started committing crimes. He's 41 now. He needs to get some drugs. He goes to a girl he knows. She wants too much. They get in a beef, he kills him.
Oh.
Now he takes the drugs and leaves, and now he's on the run, and he's looking for a place to hang out or hide out. Gets to a motel, kind of one of these residential motels where people stay for a while. Busts in, there's a 40-something-year-old woman and her blind mother. And so he decides he's going to take refuge there. He decides to bind them on the bed, thinks it'd be a good idea to rape the young woman. The mother, who's blind, hears her struggling and screaming, and she starts yelling, so Joe slits her throat. And then he proceeds to finish raping the other lady and takes off. Gets caught. Now, that's my client. Now, tell me if you don't think he's a good death penalty candidate. And the pick a jury. We've got wonderful jurors. We got a jury selection expert who's telling us all these. We got a couple of nurses. We got a special ed teacher. We got an ex-high school coach who's black. And we got one guy we don't like. He's a businessman from Pebble Beach, retired insurance business. We don't like him. But we're running out of challenges. We only get 20. And DA's way ahead of us. So we decided to take that jury, and we keep the businessman. Well, we know he's going to wind up being the foreman, and sure enough, during the guilt phase, which was a slam dunk for the prosecution, they come out with a verdict, he's the foreman. We knew that was going to happen. Now we've got to go to the penalty phase. Judge tells me he won't let me call Danny because it's not relevant, just because he made it in the world doesn't mean it's relevant to Joe. We spend 3 months in the penalty phase. We call his sister and Oregon and all. We prove that his father was his tyrant. And the jury in the penalty phase shows up a week later when we start. The businessman from Pebble Beach is no longer the foreman. Never seen that happen in hundreds of trials. They've elected a new foreman. And it's one of the social workers or somebody. Guy we thought we liked. Our guy's now just relegated to one of the 12 jurors. Jury stays out 8 or 9 days. They're hung up 10-2. For 3 or 4 days we learn. We don't know which way. 10-2, we have a pretty good idea which way. Then it goes to 11-1. Finally, 2 more days, the judge declares a mistrial. Well, guess who the one was? The Pebble Beach businessman. Our nurses, they voted to kill him on day 1. Took them about 30 seconds to kill him. So anyhow, we hang the jury. The trial costs about $4 million to try. We tell them that the DA wants to retry it. The presiding judge, it could cost more. So the DA finally gives us life without. And Joe's at Pelican Bay. And the main witnesses for us that saved his life, that in this guy's mind, because we talked to him, was that 2 correctional officers from jail testified that he was a model prisoner, that when Joe was in jail, in custody, the jail ran calm, everything was cool, didn't argue about the TV, they watched what Joe wanted to watch. But he was a calming influence. Brought in a correctional officer from Department of Corrections who testified that Joe was the best prisoner as far as his demeanor when he's locked up that they'd ever seen. So my argument is, lock him up. He's good when he's not on the streets. He's terrible when he's on the streets. Well, Joe sends me a card, a Christmas card every year. Sends me when the Raiders were good, he sent me letters about how they're better than the Niners. And Joe belongs in prison, and Joe should never get out of prison, and he won't. But there's nothing wrong with incarceration, either for Danny, because he did kill somebody, or for Joe. So incarceration isn't necessarily bad. It's just a question of what you put people away for and how long you keep them. But I'm not here to argue with the warden. You shouldn't be locking some of these people up. They ought to be off the street.
Well, I want to, you gave me this very lofty, wonderful sounding introduction, but I want to say that actually part of my bio that's never in any of those things is that I've been a victim of violent crime myself and had to testify in court against the perpetrator. And I also have very, very close loved ones who are incarcerated. And I visit California prisons several times a month and have been doing so for years. So I'm on both sides of many sides of the criminal justice story in my own personal life as well as being a crime reporter. I guess you must all know the stats, about incarceration in America, how it's skyrocketed. You see the charts from 1900 to 1973, pretty steady, and then boom, here we are. We have 5% of the world's population, 25% of the incarcerated. There's always these stunning statistics, and one that I just found, because there's always something new, is that 1 in 3 of all Americans, I just read this morning, has a criminal record now. So, we divide up this room, and, you guys over there in the corner all have criminal records. Or you guys in the back row, whatever it is. I guess in this table, 1 or 2 of us do, That's the extent of it nowadays. But I like, rather than dwelling on the problem, which is what I've done for a lot of my reporting career, I've reported on dramatic increases in life sentences, of more people dying in prison than ever before, of health and mental health issues that are exacerbated by over-incarceration. I am starting to look at the signs of hope and where things are changing and feeling that the tide is turning after 14 years of reporting on this. And I think we need hope because if you want to work and do something about a problem, you've got to feel inspired. You've got to see that you can make change happen. Right now, there's a story I'm going to be working on. It's a project for the next 6 months. It's a story of 2 lawyers, scrappy young lawyers from Berkeley and San Francisco, who 25 years ago started a lawsuit that has changed the face of incarceration in America. This lawsuit actually has turned the tide on mass incarceration. There was an inmate, severely mentally ill California prison inmate named Ralph Coleman. And attorney Michael Bean took on his case, and it became a class action lawsuit. And then Don Spector from the Prison Law Project took on the case of another inmate, Marciano Plata, who actually was incarcerated here at Salinas Valley Prison. And he had injured his knee severely and had been denied medical care for so long that it became more infected, seriously threatening his health. He finally had surgery, didn't get good aftercare. So that became another class action suit. So these lawyers are sticking with these cases. Of course, they're doing it for free. Their class doesn't have any money to hire them. But it's quite an amazing turn of events to the point where in 2011, this case makes it all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States in one of the most historic decisions ever, which was Plata. The Plata case becomes a case where the Supreme Court affirms a 3-judge panel who had earlier said that overcrowding in California prisons had gotten so severe that it constituted cruel and unusual punishment, and that we could not begin to fix the medical and mental health issues until we dealt with overcrowding. So in 2011, we have this order in California. We have got to reduce the prison population, and we've got to do it fast. So Jerry Brown implements what's now known as realignment, prisoner realignment, and there's goals that have to be reached. We don't have to get it down to what the prisons are designed for. That would be 100% of their capacity. Apparently, a little overcrowding is still okay, according to the federal judges, but we did need to get it down to 137% of what it's designed for. We were at more than 200%. I mean, I remember touring San Quentin, and literally every hallway had triple bunks in it. I mean, there was this much room for correctional officers and inmates to walk the hallways. It was just stunning to see people packed in like sardines. All the gyms and rec halls and things that are supposed to be used for rehabilitative activities were filled with beds. So I checked our prison population this week in California just to see where we're at. Because last month we were actually a little bit ahead of the inmate reduction schedule. But you know, prison population changes every week. So as of February 25th, we actually still are down. The goal is by next February. There's been a bunch of extensions the state have asked for it to reduce this population. The goal was to get down to 137% of the design capacity by next February. We are today actually at that level, in fact a little bit below it. And it's been dropping very quickly since late December and early January. I looked at a chart on the Department of Corrections website. You can see population just starts to go since December. I believe, I'm just throwing a theory out there for the heck of it, it's probably because voters passed Prop 47, which is now making certain crimes that were felonies can be misdemeanors now. That's a possibility. It's hard to say why it started to decline very, very quickly. I will add a caveat though. One of the ways that we've also reduced this population is by sending inmates to private prisons and out of state. Right now we have today 5,774 inmates in California who are in these private prisons. Some of them are in Minnesota, Oklahoma, and Arizona. And so that makes us look like, oh, we reduced our population, but actually we're just sticking them somewhere else. So we are seeing a sea change in the race to incarcerate that we've had for the last 30 years. Federal prison population also, after 32 years last month, finally took a slight dip. But put that in context again, that was after it grew almost 800% in 20 years. So for us to start to turn the tide, it's a big tide to have to turn. But there are these signs of actually things switching the other direction. And again, those two scrappy lawyers who had no idea they were going to have this case that would change the course of this nation. It just shows that two people can actually put their heads together and make something that important happen. In fact, one of them, Don Spector, wasn't even going to work on prison. He was passing through California on his way to Hawaii or something and just decided to stick around and volunteer on this case that has now made history. And so one of the other signs we're seeing is a huge coalition now of groups coming together. This is something that this is new to me in my 14 years of this, where we're seeing left, right, libertarian, and everybody in between all of a sudden now coming together on dealing with over-incarceration. It used to be all the politicians had to be tough on crime or you wouldn't get elected, and now we hear the phrase smart on crime. There was just a new organization that was announced, it was launched last month, and that's the Coalition for Public Safety, that has made changing our incarceration rate a priority. And it's got, of course, the ACLU and groups that have always championed the cause of trying to reduce our prison population. But there's this group I've covered for a few years called Right on Crime. This is Newt Gingrich. Ultra-Republicans are supporting this because they have their own reasons why it makes sense to them. And if you look on Right on Crime's website, you think you're reading the ACLU's manifesto. It's just like, I can't believe Newt Gingrich's name is under this, and other arch conservatives are supporting this. So these coalitions are now coming together. There's the Koch brothers, you know, who supported every conservative cause you can think of, have now started an initiative to reduce incarceration and reduce over-criminalization in this country. So you are seeing this change starting to come about, and I just want to encourage people to find out more about these organizations and these coalitions, because it's probably not going to change unless there's a coalition. You know, and the right wing might be doing it for financial reasons, the left wing might be doing it for humanitarian reasons, but whatever the end result is, if they're coming together to make this change, it's a good opportunity to jump in and actually make something happen. So that's where I'm at these days.
All righty then. My goodness. Many of the statistics I was going to share, She just mentioned them all, so I'm just gonna sit here and listen.
I figured somebody else was
She's
gonna
awesome.
mention it.
Julie's awesome, I've known her for years, I appreciate all the work that she's done.
And likewise.
And I know of some of my own probationers and parolees that have graduated from our transitions program, you know, have had the opportunity to talk to you and be interviewed by you. And, you know, it's great when you have passionate, compassion-oriented people that are in this business. And believe me, folks, this is a business. I don't care what anybody says to you. When we think about the Koch brothers and Newt Gingrich and whomever else, it's about the dollars and cents. I just put it down here every time I heard different things. It really goes back to that as opposed to what it really should be, which is humanity. Humanity. It's just the right thing to do to help people that need to have an opportunity at a second chance. Is there anybody in this room that's never done anything wrong? If so, raise your hand. And I'm in a profession where I can tell if you're telling me the truth or not. So I'm going to be looking at you sideways probably. But that's the facts. I mean, everybody makes a mistake, and sadly, a lot of these issues happen when people are very young. You know, and the stories you shared about the individual that, you know, had hardships and then became because he came in contact with a mentor and an individual that gave him a second chance, a great career. I could tell you stories after stories of that kind of statistical information. I'm a fourth generation criminal justice professional in my family. My grandfather, great-grandfather, my father, my two older brothers all worked in the criminal justice systems, and myself. I'm named after three of them, all the same name except for mine's Jacqueline, and there's this Jack C. Simon, first, second, and third. A lot of tradition in my family. The other thing that's very important about that is we all believe in second chances because we've all seen it. I've been in the criminal justice system for 28 years. 28 years, a long time. Sometimes I feel it's been too long because I've seen so much. I am somewhat encouraged that we have some new information out there, and there are people getting together to look at this and to start looking at incarceration differently, and second chances, and new groups are working together to try to do something about that. But I'm also just wondering why it took so long, because a whole lot of people have died, and that's why, for me, this is about saving a life. That's why I do this. I can go on and on about just the statistics of our success. Transitions for Recovery and Reentry Program is simply that. Three very important words in that title, that nonprofit name. Transitions for an individual to have a positive recovery, because when you're incarcerated, whether you're in juvenile hall, which is where we work as well, the juvenile center, in which we also work and volunteer as well, probation, I have contracts with the probation systems to provide cognitive behavior and evidence-based practice approaches to helping people make second and better chances and better choices. But at the end of the day, you know, where should we go with this? It's systems. We all need to get on the same page to provide second chances and support services for individuals that desire that. Now, let me also speak a little bit about those that are just really so far gone. They're so immersed in the system. They've been locked up so many times. And let me tell you, every time I've heard that, I worked in this field 28 years, so I've heard so much where individuals, as you know, children have been raped and have been locked in closets and hidden in rooms, and just, you know, if any one of us ever had something like that happen, how would we turn out? I'm not giving them an excuse for the bad and the wrong they probably ended up preying on society, but we need to help them. I mention that because in many of my cognitive behavioral sessions that I've had and taught in, I can't tell you how many, and in 28 years, okay, so we're talking about thousands of people that have come through my programs that have shared information with us for the first time about suicides they tried to attempt on themselves, about abuse that was levied on them at all levels in the system, in juvenile hall, in juvenile center, in jails, in prisons, and in foster homes, and all these other environments. Now, if you look at that and hear that, I mean, if it hits your ears like it hits mine, we really need to do something about that. There needs to be a check and balance here. I'm glad that the system is now looking at realignment. Realignment is important, I wrote it down. My program is part of a realignment of probation, doing things differently compared to parole, California Department of Corrections, and rehabilitation. We are suddenly, finally doing more in the area of the R word that was never mentioned for so long. Would you agree with me on that? Mm-hmm. Rehabilitation is what it's always supposed to have been about. When you lock someone up and then not teach them new skills or identify their problems and their issues, and then believe they're going to come out okay and better, believe me, you're so wrong. And then I remembered during, maybe about 3 years ago, 500 teachers, SAT programs and all the others, I guess the word even, remember how many people were laid off in those systems. Those were the educators there. Now, some of them weren't doing the best job, but they were in there providing some services, and some individuals were getting some reentry services. And that's important, reentry services. Individuals need to have that. If they don't, they're going to come out worse than when they went in. Because a lot of times they're educating themselves and they're hooking up with people that know it a little bit more, how to end up committing a crime and not being caught. Most people don't think that that's something that people really go in and learn about, but they do. So they're being taught on a whole nother level. I'm, as I said, a political official in this community as well. Ms. Black and I served on a couple committees in the past, and I've always appreciated your work as well. Just won my third four-year term, providing safety and working in the environment for 7 communities, of which we have lots of issues related to gang violence everywhere. Gang violence is off the charts. We've had many successes, but I can tell you of 7 people that are right here in my memory, that when I close my eyes, I still see them, because they tried to step away from a gang, and then the gang didn't allow them to. Or if the gang allowed them to, they thought they can go back and say, hey, how are you all doing? One of the most recent cases was Daniel Fraga, that was just finally settled recently, where he graduated from our program, helped me to go into communities and help pull away, get people out of the system, getting these little homies out of the gangs. Taking them to Hartnell to learn how to play ball and throw the frisbee around and all this positive environment, and having them say, hey, step away from the gang. I've been there, look what it did to me, it's not a good thing. And then 3 years later, after he got out, he decided to accept a barbecue invitation to go back to visit them. 2 people took him into an area and assassinated him. And just recently, they just finally solved that case. And for the first time ever in my 28 years did I accept an invitation for someone to have me come in and speak in court against people that ended up murdering him. And I really struggled with that, because a lot of times I chose to stay out of that part of it, because the system must come in and do what it must do. But this was a brutal murder. And I was thinking about the 25 people that requested me to come in and to speak before the courts, so that we could send a message to gangs that we have to do this differently, and that there is the C word in my class, about this big. Ms. Benavides, what is the word probably? That there are what?
Consequences.
Could you please give her a hand? I mean, that's, and I think that's in my program, we're cognitive behavioral, we talk about the big words, consequences. There's consequences in all of this. And they, by killing him, hurt us in providing other support services in that area to help others. Because the little youngsters would look up to him and figure, yeah, Daniel, he said stay away from this. Go home. Stop hanging out. A lot of these children don't have anywhere to go. They don't have anything to do. My goodness, there's so much that has been taken away of the educational system in grade schools. So if I look at the big picture and all that we're dealing with, we got to start where these kids are in grade school. We got to start at kindergarten. Are you really hearing me? And if any of you have children, how many of your children, raise your hand? Kids? Seriously? 4 people? I'm shocked. In the criminal justice system, when I asked that question, 90% of a class this large have children. And one of the main reasons why I got involved in this area is for that reason. Because Dr. T.C. Esselstein at San Jose State University many years ago said to our students in an AJ class, you know, there's an interesting stat you all should be aware of. He said 38% of children that have parents that have been in the system end up in the system. 38%. So I just said, my goodness, that is a horrific figure. It's almost a death sentence for some. I need to do something about that instead of just talking about that. So I decided to change my field from going into, my parents wanted me, my mom wanted me to be a public defender, my dad wanted me to be a prosecutor. I don't know why. They saw me differently, I guess. And I decided that I would go to community corrections. I changed my emphasis because then I can get DA and public defender and everybody in the community together to help at the end result of that family. And you heard me say family because when one person's in custody or criminal justice system, everybody is in that family. All of you feel it, every minute of it. And if anyone tries to tell you that it's not the truth, believe me, that's wrong. And that's why we need to do this. The educational approach to this is learning about all of that sadness. So if we fast forward up to the year 2015, from many years ago, when I was in college, pursuing this area, reentry, what do you think the stat is now? How many of those do you believe end up in the system if their parents have been in the system? Anyone? It's 38% way back when.
About 60 now.
60%? Okay, anybody else?
About right.
79.5% of children that have parents that are in the system end up in the system. And every time I have to make that statement, and it's important that I do, it's everything in my power just to hold the tears back. Because I think about what that means to that child, to that family. And unfortunately, most of these families are minorities. They don't have the good lawyers, they have the public defender a lot of times, and they're just rushing in and they're overworked and they're trying to do a good job, and this individual ends up getting time, lots of time. A lot needs to be done, and for the record, what you're doing here, this is part of what needs to be done, is education and discussion about it. So I think I might have a minute left, so let me just hit a couple other areas. Why I am so serious about this, and many people say that I don't know how to tell a joke. I usually don't. My staff and people that are here tonight that have been in my programs, but I'm going to keep trying to tell a joke because you got to really take this to that level at some time. But I'm so serious about this because I know the faces and the lives of those that have been trying, and the system sometimes just hits them head on, and we need to do that differently. I'm glad that CTF is now, where the warden is currently, Salinas Valley, is one of those hubs for reentry. And that is our word in what we do. Reentry is one of the most important things that we need to provide individuals that are in the system. Because most of them are there because low self-esteem, lack of employment, substance abuse. I have studies upon studies, 28 years of experience in that. For instance, lack of personal empowerment leads to anger, leads to low self-esteem, leads to self-hatred. And then you start hating on yourself as a person in the system. Though you might not agree, you come through our program, we try to help you with that. You then say, oh, that's why I've been continuing to go back to that comfort zone of doing the same thing over and over and over again. Self-fulfilling prophecy. So they come to our cognitive behavioral evidence-based practice approach programs, and we have successes. We have one of the most successful organizations in the whole state for 5 years, and I purposely stayed with parole for 5 additional years to make sure our statistics were solid enough for me to say to you, go through our program, watch how your life changes. We have 3 sites right now, one in Salinas that has a 65% success of graduation, improvement of test scores, graduating from somewhere when you haven't for 85% of your life. 85% of individuals in the system have never graduated from anywhere. Once they graduate one time from something positive and good like this, watch how their self-esteem rises, their self-worth, because that's what it's about. Just how you feel about you, they feel the same way about themselves, whatever that is. And if we could help them with some of this, which is what we do in our program, it helps to give them an opportunity that there is an opportunity to have a better life. Unhealthy relationships, my goodness. How many people have had unhealthy relationships? Anybody? See, how many people? 3 of us? 4 of us? Oh my goodness! I want to talk about this. Oh, there we go. Honesty is here. Thank you. Unhealthy relationships. A lot of times they end up going back with the same people once they get out that they were involved with in the beginning, and it's a vicious cycle. Substance abuse. My goodness. When we're talking about so many people having a record now, 1 out of 3 you're saying, so. Let's see, that means, well, I don't know, all of us, we could be a part of this system. And these individuals are in areas where they don't have a lot of support service to help them. And they have no funds to help them. So usually they're going to end up back in that system. Unemployment. If you don't have a job, you feel like you have no self-worth because you're not paying your own way. But these are survivors. They're going to find a way to pay their bills. And you know, I've had students say, Ms. Simon, my lady said, the kids need food, you know, we need diapers. Honey, go do whatever you gotta do. And they go and they rob and boost, and they get together, little associations of who needs what, and they take care of themselves. What if we can get them together in one of our 3 pathways? And that's partially what our agency does, is progressive life skills training and pathways for personal empowerment through education, employment, and entrepreneurship. We get them into Hartnell. We have over 400 people in Hartnell College right now. We get them grants, get them tuitions paid for, books, and then they come back like Mr. MIIS, who's here tonight, that graduated our program 5 times, because it takes you a while to get to where you're at. It takes sometimes more than a few months to get out of that, and for some people it takes a lifetime. Think about that. But when you do, then you can help me help others. And that's why he should be at Hartnell tonight, but he said he wanted to come here and hear this and maybe share something with you later on. Perfect example of what we're talking about. So if we can provide them with these pathways, I don't want to just talk about this. I want to say, here's what we do. We help them, maybe they're business owners. So we help them in entrepreneurial areas. As a professor at San Jose State, I taught entrepreneurism, and we were some of the best in the, and actually in the United States. We had people from Europe that came over to visit us in Silicon Valley in regards to that area. I have that whole program right in our criminal justice agency. So, to make a long story shorter, criminogenic thinking. When an individual only knows certain levels of thinking because that's all they've been taught or been exposed to. Like all these children that are growing up in these families and these homes that have gang associations or whatever association for survival. Because let's be real, a lot of gang associations is about survival. It's about a life. It's about the life they've been taught and how they're raised. And until we change the way some of that happens, it's going to continue to be that. And if we don't do something about it, then it's on us. So Prop 47, I think is the last thing I wanted to mention a little bit about. I'm glad that that actually...
Excuse me, Jeff, could we do that later? Because our organizers here have set up some food and drink for us, and they wanted us to have a chance to engage, to take advantage of that, and then come back and talk some more. And I do particularly want to get back to Prop 47.
Okay.
I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
So let's start with that right after the break.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sure, let's go.
No, but I mean, we'll be taking questions from the audience too, but I would like to start with that because I think it is really important.
Right.
And just before we break and have a little social few minutes. How many minutes should we take now? 10? 10, okay. I wanted to say a special thanks to Darina and Alessandro, co-president, and Stephanie, our events organizer, and Eric, who did the wonderful flyer for this event. Am I missing? At any rate, thank you. And don't anybody go away. We want to hear from all of you and really take this a good bit farther. Any kind of question that can, pull out our learning experience from these wonderful people and tell us what you bring to this as well. Your questions can be directed to individuals or just to the panel as a whole, or to the crowd as a whole. And I want panelists to feel free to join into any particular conversation. I mean, it's very much a round table sort of thing at this point. And we'll pick it up now with Prop 47, because that's where we left off, and that's really important. So let's let Jackie have a Jacqueline.
Give her a hand for saying my name right.
I can love it. But anyway, that's very important. So why don't you tell them a little bit about that, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, thank you very much. And I believe a lot of you probably have heard about Prop 47, yes?
Yes.
Okay, how many of you think it was a good thing to have on the process of voting one way or another for it, to let the electorate have an idea of what that's all about? Raise your hand if you think that was a good idea. Okay, my hand's up too. It was a good idea. But they didn't tie it to programs. They said they were going to do that. Friends of mine that work at the new prison here in Monterey County, because if you're doing 8 years at the jail, to me that's a prison. It's a lot of time to be done in a local facility like that. Was saying, we are releasing people at 12:01, night of the election. And I said, really? And I said, wow, how could they have gotten everything all together so soon? And it was starting to happen in several facilities throughout the state. Thinking that what it was a get out of jail free card situation, but not tied to programs. Not tied to the reason why a lot of those individuals ended up there. I agree that you need to, a person that has a problem with substance abuse, treatment, recovery, they should have a program. Most people that come through our programs, that come to my current programs with the county, probation, and with parole in the past, have never had a program. And I am talking about 28 years of working in this area, so I'm an expert in this field. And of that, only 10% of women that have come through my programs have ever had a program. And I did say 28 years of experience. And I have the statistics that backs this up. So that tells us we need to do this differently. So Prop 47, and we were speaking earlier, and you had some great comments in regards to it, and I'm sure maybe others here on the panel do as well. That has to be tied to funding, reentry services, support services related to substance abuse treatment and recovery. So we need to do something different in that area, because many people are being released and they're going right back to the local new jail/prison that we have here in Monterey County. Because when they were released, they weren't given support services of, here's what you do at this point in time. Here's a support-oriented resource development program that you can take advantage of. Go and sign up with them. Go to transitions. Go to Turning Point or wherever. They're not given that information. Everybody's just happy that they're out. So we need to do something very differently about that. Would you like to share what you were sharing with me earlier? I think it's very, very important.
So I do some criminal justice work locally in the community, and a critique that I had of Prop 47 was that it said that 65% of the funding was going to go to mental health and rehabilitation, but it actually goes to the Board of State and Community Corrections, which is the California board, which is responsible for prison construction, among other things. So theoretically, the money could be used to build something like a mental health jail or something like that. So it really could be reinvested back in the system of mass incarceration, which I'm not saying that I don't think Prop 47 should have passed. I think it sent a really important message that California is ready to take a step back away from its tough on crime mentality, showing that it doesn't work. But I agree with Jacqueline that there are a lot of implementation issues that Prop 47 has brought up, and now it's really up for, to community members or leaders to step up to the plate and find how we're really going to take care of these folks who have these substance abuse and trauma-induced problems.
Exactly. And if I could just make one more statement. Earlier, we were talking about what we do. We provide wraparound support services to parolees, probationers, youth at risk, veterans, which to me, they're just almost excluding services for. So many people have come through our program that were vets that never had an opportunity to deal with PTSD. And for the first time, they're talking about it in our program. And they're 30, 40, 50 years old. That's egregious, though there's funds available to deal with that. So I believe that there's implementation problems, and we need to definitely do something about that for the future, because those funds aren't there. They're saving a lot of funding. And as Ms. Reynolds stated, a lot of these funds, and a lot of these individuals are being shipped to different places throughout the United States. So yes, the prison population decreased. I am glad about that. It was awful. But where are those individuals now? And then who's actually providing services for those individuals now? And in closing, those that are providing services, what is their motivation? Too much, too many times, it's the dollar sign.
Well, I'll jump in on that.
Please, I know you know.
When we first, realignment was about to become the law of the land in California, I started looking at lobbying expenses and who was hovering around Sacramento and throwing money all over the place. And it was subsidiaries of the Corrections Corporations of America and Geo Group, which are the two largest private prison companies. And they were realizing that if they couldn't get them, if incarceration rates are going down, so they couldn't make their money that way, they were going to get in on the other side and set up rehab facilities, and they do. I mean, one in Monterey County is run by a subsidiary of Geo, right? So they actually were able to get these contracts all over the state and kind of hit it that way. But those are for-profit companies, so you have to think again about, is that really the best group to be running something that has to have a different measure of success? Whenever you have a flat rate, for instance, there's a temptation to make your shareholders happy by cutting corners. If you're not answerable to the citizens, I mean, at least our prison system in California is run by the state, there's not this like flat fee, so you're gonna cut every corner you can. And that's a problem with some of this response to realignment, and I'm sure if we start getting programs through Prop 47, don't be surprised about seeing the private companies hovering around and trying to get those contracts.
Well, frankly, I'm a little bit of a cynic. In fact, I'm a lot.
Really? More than a journalist.
I'm a lot of a cynic. And I often just thought that what I ought to do is retire from the practice of law and get into the mandatory program business, which means with all purpose, we do interlocks for your car, we do anger management for your DV case, we do DUI classes for your mandatory DUI, parenting classes, you name it, we do it, just pay it. Because every day in every court, somebody gets ordered as a condition of probation to do domestic violence, 52 weeks of domestic violence classes. Statutory, thanks to our good friend Mr. Simpson. But everybody doesn't need 52 weeks of anger management classes, and all the judges agree that, yeah, if you lock your spouse in the closet and bring her food every 2 days, yeah, you probably need anger management classes. But if you get angry in an overflow water bottle at her, you probably don't need 52 weeks of anger management classes to teach you that that's probably inappropriate conduct. But everybody gets the same. And who benefits from that? The anger management classes. The students probably got the picture after maybe 8 weeks. And some of the judges, John Phillips, who's now one of our supervisors, always thought that was a lot of baloney. And so he would say, all right, I'm ordering you 52 weeks of anger management. Come back here in 2 months. He did a court date. 2 months later, he said, all right, what'd you learn? Oh, I'm good with it now. I learned it. If he believed him, he said, okay, I suspend the rest. And the DA said, you can't do that. He said, appeal. Appeal. But that's because he was a common sense guy who realized that the shoe doesn't fit everybody. And you do what you ought to do. And it's the same is true for all these other 52 weeks of parenting classes. If you get convicted of, just had a lady left her kids in the car for 20 minutes while she was in Kmart. It was not 119 degrees. And the kids were, you know, one was like 4 and the other one was like 2. And they were in their little steep things. And she went in to exchange something. 52 weeks of parenting classes. Well, she doesn't need that. She knew she was wrong when she did it, but she was in a hurry. So it doesn't make any sense, but that's what they do.
Well, I guess I'm gonna disagree with you.
That's fine.
And I know it's fine, and I'm just gonna, I wanna be clear, because even that person that leaves a child, you leave a child in a car lot, there's so many things that can happen to them there. I mean, that's kind of, you know, something that I think, anger management, that commentary about what may cause a person to throw a bottle of water at someone or lock them up in the, you know, in a room. There's deep-seated stuff there sometimes that we don't know, and it needs to be dealt with, and sometimes it takes a year or more to get to that.
And sometimes it doesn't.
And I was just gonna say, and sometimes it doesn't, but we can't take the chance that we're letting someone go after 50% of that time. I've worked in the field 28 years with lots of abusers, with rapists, with the worst of the worst in Silicon Valley and in this community as well. Pelican Bay, Cochrane, whoever, wherever, they came to my program, and I had to assess them and work with them to help develop treatment plans. And they would say, Ms. Simon, I've never known how to deal with this, and that's why I end up always beating, raping, whatever else it all is. So all I'm saying to you is, I hear your point. Not everybody needs to have the 52 weeks, except I would never want to be wrong about how much a person needs
Well,
when they have issues.
if you don't want to be wrong on these little minor misdemeanor domestic violence cases, the ones that there's no blood or broken bones, so they get to be misdemeanors. Lock them all up for a year, that's the penalty. And then he won't do that for a year, he'll be locked up.
Okay, so let me tell you about the trauma that may happen to the person that's happening to. The child, the mother, the wife, the children. I've lived this, worked in this environment, and all I'm saying, I appreciate you and all the work that you've done. Believe me, I respect you immensely. But this is about, you know, people in their lives, and I happen to believe that individuals need to have as much counseling and support services and reentry as possible, especially when it happens to do with anger management and, you know, substance abuse levels there, because sometimes it may be something else.
Excuse me, you all, let's bring the audience back into this. They need a chance.
I myself worked in at least 4 different programs for rehabilitating, counseling, and transition as well, youth, mostly actually all youth. And I think the case here, what's going on is that it's quality over quantity. I think I'm kind of relating to what Mr. Newhouse is saying, because I've seen a lot of repetitive clients that I don't like to, I like to see them as students, you know, just our friends, but it's repetitive. Sometimes it is repetitive where they're there work that is given to them, if you're actually putting your heart into it and you're in the program for the right reasons, you know, that it's not so much where people are there not for the money, obviously, as well, you know, just the programs themselves, that they're actually giving their services for the right reasons. I have seen a lot, you know, repetitive, a lot of recidivism everywhere. And it's all a matter of quality over quantity. You know, a lot of the court tends to give a lot, to send a lot of people for the wrong people to alcohol or abusive, those types of rehab programs for anger management and all of that. I have seen it too many times. You know, so I really believe that it's just reading between the cracks and really, the shoe really doesn't fit everyone. You know, I really agree with that. And it's more about quality over quantity.
Michael, I wanted to bring you into this conversation. Michael has done a lot of work in Salinas on behalf of the majority of the gangs, trying to help gang members reintegrate. But yeah.
And part of my question, thank you for speaking on this important topic. My name is Mike, I'm a student here in MIIS. Actually wanted my questions talking about reintegration programs specifically operating in prisons. And I wanted to ask particularly Mr. Muniz and Ms. Simon about, well, I've learned in a couple of my classes about the high correlation between reintegration programs and reducing recidivism rates, and particularly the sooner they're in these programs, the better, and reduce and basically keeping them out of the system. Can you speak on that, and can you attest whether that's true or not? Maybe starting with Mr. Muniz, whether reintegration programs, particularly in prisons, is the ideal way to go in terms of rehabilitation, or giving ex-convicts or ex-offenders the necessary tools to reintegrate into communities and societies?
Well, I appreciate the question. I don't think I'm an expert in that field, to be honest with you. Our institution is actually not a reentry hub. The correctional training facility, Soledad, the institution next to us is. So we don't have that program, so we don't have much in the way to offer a lot of the inmates. We don't actually have that many inmates that are paroling from Salinas Valley State Prison. I can speak to what I observe, and one of the things that I've observed is when I speak with inmates, they are always asking for those types of programs. And so one of the things that's really difficult, and you know, there's been lean times in the department, and as was discussed earlier, some of the things that were gutted were educational opportunities, vocational opportunities. AB 900 isn't even something we want to necessarily even get into, because that was supposed to be slated to really aid us, and I don't think those monies were really utilized for that. We didn't really get into that, those funds. Inmates are always asking for tools to help them, especially when they get closer to home. And I kind of want to explain from the prison side of this, speaking to a veteran here. A lot of things that the inmates do inside of a prison is done for their survival. It's almost a lot like what is done probably in combat. I can't speak to that because I didn't go. I liken it to that, but I also know that I'm speaking about something I don't actually know by my experience. Inmates, I believe, do things in prisons they would not otherwise normally do. And so by the time they're ready to sort of move out of this mode of survival, I call it survival, it might be super sensational, I don't know. But when they get out of this survival mode, they start trying to gear down into more family modes and things that might be more mainstream. And we don't have a lot of programs like that to offer them. So I think maybe you could answer that better, because unfortunately we're not in a position right now to offer that. We would transfer inmates to reentry hubs to give them those programs, and we just don't have them right now. I think only 14 institutions do.
Well, if I put out statutorily, the purpose of incarceration is public safety and punishment by statute. That's the purpose of incarceration. Back in late 70s, the statutory purpose of incarceration was public safety and rehabilitation. And the law changed, And the statute changed right about the time Reagan became governor. And the legislature did it, but he, didn't veto it. And right about that time, all the crafts, you could learn to be an electrician, you could learn to be a plumber, you could learn to be a carpenter, and they had guys who were retired union guys or guys who were still working who'd come in, they'd get paid to spend their time basically teaching inmates, at least in Soledad, which is, a lighter weight institution, how to do a job so when they get on the streets they can do a job. Well, that's all gone, even in the reentry prisons. It's really got, A, because of the philosophy and the statute, and B, because nobody wants to spend the money.
So, did you want to?
Yes, Mr. Masters, I'm involved in transition. Myself, I just been released from Soledad in August. I'm a veteran, and a lot of these, like they say, these programs are not offered at all the prisons. And everybody there wants, like you said, wants these programs there, because all they're doing is just jailing it. They're not doing nothing. They go. Some of them have work, some of them don't. A lot of those guys over there, they want these programs to have this stuff in their head when they get paroled. Myself, there was nothing, like this, there at Soledad. I didn't get there until I paroled, and when I reached probation office, I didn't even know I was AB 109. Till the science program, they told me I was AB 109. Okay, what is this? Just another 30-day program? Get in, get out, here's the street, see ya. But that didn't happen. When I reached the science program, I jumped in with both feet. Okay, George, let's see what's happening here. Maybe this time is different. I have a strike. I wasn't able to get to Prop 36. So there I am, just going in and out of prison, back and forth since the 80s. So this time, like she said, you change the way you think, it changes your behavior. And since then, my life has changed. I've graduated from the program 5 times. And now I'm enrolled at Hartnell. My probation was 3 years. It's terminated now at 5 months because of this Simon's program. I've always seen this stuff happen to other guys. It's never happened to somebody like me. And that's why like these programs need to be in prisons, because those guys are just sitting there, not knowing what's going to happen when they get to the streets. That's why they keep going back. But if these programs were in the prisons, I would probably, my life would have been different. But since I jumped in with both feet in the science program, everything in my life has changed. I even got married. Thank you. And my life has just changed. This is a time, if this would have happened 30 years ago, where would I have been? And now, everything in my life is just going back to school and being a mentor there at the program. I see these guys coming in, these youngsters, they don't know what's going on, they don't know what's going to happen. I tell them, look, this is what happened to me. And they see me as a, because I'm one of them. They see me and they look like, okay, maybe I have a chance now. And it does work. If this stuff goes into the prison, it will work.
Can I indulge you really quickly? Because we had mentioned earlier that we probably were at prison at the same time on different sides there of the fence. And we have correctional counselors who work inside of a prison, so at the risk of sounding damaging and detrimental to our staff, which is not really my intention, were you provided those kinds of programs by your counselor?
No.
And I assume that was the answer. And so one of the benefits we have actually of the reduction in our prison population is that we can a little better adequately address some of the issues. And I know that was really emphasized during Plata and Coleman. If you're not aware of what those presidential cases are, has to do with medical care, under which right now we're currently under a federal receivership, and mental health care, which really was a complete afterthought in terms of the design and construction of prisons. And now we've had to try to figure out how to manage both of those monsters. But now that we've gotten smaller in size and able to better balance that, we actually can start to think more rehabilitative in terms of some of the programs. And when you have triple high bunks that you can hardly get through in terms of getting through a gym, all of our gyms right now are used for either recreational purposes or group space or therapeutic communities, which we had never done that. Our prison's 18 years old, and well, I'm coming on 19 on April 1st. I don't know if you should open a prison on April 1st. In any case, in 19 years, we've only had 3 lifers get a date. And yeah, I figure I should just leave that hang for a second, because it does kind of come with pain. And CTF Soledad right now is paroling more lifers, probably 5 or 6 per month.
It's amazing.
And things have really changed. And what's really interesting about that, and I kind of wanted to touch on it because Julie and I had mentioned this during the break, is that inmates for the first time in a long time, and I know that you're out now, George, but there actually is starting to be hope.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how a little bit of hope can go a long way. We have inmates who believed that things were never going to change, and this was their life. They were never going to be given a break, and so really they resigned themselves to the notion of survival for the rest of their lives in this prison. And it's a really, really tough world. You know, it's a place kind of where the weak fish gets eaten by the healthy fish. You know, you don't have a fish tank, you know what that's like. And so now that there's hope, well, the 3-judge panel, right? The 3-judge panel, they stepped in. Our legislature has stepped in. The voters have stepped in, about 47. And when you consider that's really where we get most of our California law from, either from the judicial precedential cases, Supreme Court, our legislators, and also, you know, like recently we had AB 2308, the Cal ID process for a lot of our inmates. Now they're going to be getting California ID so that they actually have a chance to sign up for programs and services, and they're not just going to be randomly walking around the streets. And then the voters, and so these are the same voters that not too long ago voted for 3 strikes law. This is the same voter pool that thought, you know, throw them over the fence, like, you know, Escape from New York style, if that's not too old of a reference for some of you here. That's the movie where New York was a prison, you just chucked them over the fence. If you're younger, you probably don't know that. But in any case, the voters then also voted and have changed the way they view incarceration. Well, that's actually sent a pretty strong message to what our population is, mostly lifers. Guys have actually said, you know, maybe I need to rethink this. Maybe I need to. But then there need to be programs that marry up that hope with something to offer. And so it's very interesting to hear a lot of this dialogue. Really have, I'm going up for vetting to be appointed by the governor, and his special appointment person is a lady by the name of Nettie Sablehouse. I'm sure she's going to interview me. And everybody has told me her interest is only rehabilitation, education, anything that leads to these kind of cognitive changes, you know, anything that has to do, we really believe in these kinds of changes. I don't want to go into the whole, you know, neuroscience of neuroplasticity and epigenetics and all the thought processes that go along with changing the way, a great quote, and I don't even know who said it. If one of you know, please tell me. A great quote is, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And so I don't know who said that. But somebody once told us it was an inmate, so we ran with that. And until I can be disproven later on Google or something. And so we are also going through that. We're also going through viewing things differently. And there was actually times where we didn't have hope. And when I say we, I can decidedly refer to me. There was times where I started to lose hope that people could change it, that we could actually make a difference, and that what we were doing wasn't just wasting our time. I thought it was for a while. We were just spinning our wheels and wasting our time. We're just trying to survive through the day. And things have gotten better. And, you know, a new light has somewhat emerged, and we're moving in a direction where rehabilitative programs have, you know, gotten some traction. And, you know, when we hear these great outcomes and that we've gotten 3 guys with dates in 19 years, even though that seems really, really small, we're hoping that will be a trend towards more release dates. Not that I'm trying to kick everybody out of prison, okay, I'm not. When I talk about inmates getting dates, I'm talking about the fact that they were able to change significantly in such a manner that the board would say, you know, you look like somebody who could be a valued member of our society again. You could be trusted to not disturb the peace that we want Californians to enjoy. When you guys go shopping, you like to be feeling safe. When you walk across the street tonight to your car, you would like to feel safe. And that's really what prison's about. It's just that we get kind of off the beaten track if we don't have meaningful programs and we don't have hope. Anyway, I probably said too much.
And
No,
you're
so
projecting-
if I can
and you're
answer that,
projecting-
if-
And you're projecting for a good positive change, and you're on board with that.
Absolutely.
As your vetting comes on, we can expect some good positive things coming.
Well, I learned something interesting today, this week. I've got a client in Santa Cruz, and he's gonna get a 3-year prison's term on a nonviolent offense, and he's gonna do it in the county jail. Well, he's doing a prison sentence, he's just doing it in county jail because of realignment. The Santa Cruz sheriff, and by local option, any sheriff can do it, but the Santa Cruz County Sheriff has developed what's called a CAP program, which he can put an ankle bracelet on this prisoner and put him on the streets and send him back to work on home detention. Well, there's no prison can do that. Warden here couldn't put a guy on an ankle bracelet if he wanted to. But the sheriff, because the guy is now a local prisoner, even though he's a state prisoner, he's a local prisoner, can do it. Monterey County has not become enlightened enough yet to do that, but Santa Cruz is always ahead of the curve. They still got a work furlough program of all things.
Yeah, that's true, they are.
But they're always right in front of the curve. But I was shocked to learn, my guy told me, my guy said, oh, I can get bracelet. No, you can't in prison. I said, yes, I can. I checked, he could.
So if I can answer the gentleman's question that you had earlier, and you definitely had a lot of good things to say. The pendulum is now swinging, and if you're old enough to know what I mean by that, you're really old. We, back in the day, provided what was called breaking barriers, which was cognitive behavior. My 4th generation family that worked in the criminal justice system has always believed in that, and it's cognitive behavior. It's the thinking process that you change. You change your thought process, and that's why Mr. MIIS is hitting it out of the park when he comes with me to talk to the youth at risk and to other individuals that are in the system still, and we're working to help them get out of the system and then become like him. Because he says, hey, I'm proof that this works, and he's, of age. The pendulum is swinging to programs now. So we're a program. It's very important that you have programs like ours in the system to work with Johnny, Joe, or Sally Mae, whoever is there, before they return to the community. So there's that connection, and it's not culture shock after you walk out that prison door. Think about that. That's a hard thing, because you've been in custody. You've been locked up, and some people for many, many years. I think it's traumatic just to come out after you've been locked up for a month or a year. So if we look at providing services before pre-release, I would love to come into your prison and
We're
provide.
talking.
Okay. We can make
Have it right here, folks.
because and I'm just saying this, that I'm so proud to be a part of an association and a belief where I see miracles happen every day. Mr. MIIS graduated 4 times and then said, I want to come back a 5th time, and now he's helping me help others. And when these little homies come in, I'll post it up in our probation program. Ms. Benavides is there as well, and our program administrator, Mr. Pertero, is there as well. Sees them and how they change just when they start talking to some of the other people about, you don't have to be so hard in here. You could drop that down, focus that energy into changing your thinking about yourself. And we guarantee we'll be behind you all along the way. We will arm wrestle with whoever in the system, because if we know that you're doing what you said you're gonna do, and they have a program, they have a contract they signed with us. I am zero tolerance. Everybody knows me. You see how I feel about my name. You know that we're gonna stick to our program. So if we had more programs going into the system, working in pre-release environments, providing services, giving them hope. Yes, sir, you are so right. Giving them hope, because that, to me, at the end of the day, it's in all of my classrooms we have all over this county. Words like hope and change is possible, and you can become a better person. Just think you can, and we will help you become that. Because if we don't, that trauma that they've experienced, that they haven't even identified yet, and that's why we have very major issues like anger issues or low self-esteem issues, how that comes out at times when you just least expect it. And then you end up doing something that you will normally be sorry for That's where we deal with some of that. Another thing, evidence-based practice. These programs that you were referring to earlier, maybe none of them have had the test of evidence-based practice approach. Cognitive behavior is the latest. We have a program in this community getting the largest contract always, all the time, and it was sole source to them. And their job, and it was mentioned earlier, they're funded by the Geo Corporation, I believe it is, and it's to their advantage to keep people in the system because it's for profit. Ours is nonprofit. All we want to do is help people get from one stage to the next so they can learn and feel good about who they are, and then they come back and help us. So pre-release programs inside the prison with cognitive behavior in mind, as well as evidence-based practice approach. My instructors and teachers that go in are certified, they're cognitive behavioralists, they are credentialed, they know what they're doing, they know how to push, and they know how to bring it back so that we have the statistics of change that is possible in the system. And we need to do it for enclosure, 2 reasons. My main reason is because it's just humanitarian. We need to help people that have made a mistake, that admit it, that want help for themselves. And lastly, it's just too darn expensive. You can't keep locking people up thinking they're going to have a different result. They're going to come back meaner, badder, and all that goes in it. So I appreciate your question. It's excellent, and I'm glad that we have a warden here that is very interested in looking at rehabilitation and cognitive behavior, because that is it right there. For all of us, it is.
Can I add one thing real quick?
I think
Okay.
you have one.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. My name is Corinne Smith, and I'm an international policy student here. And my question is about trauma from the practitioner side. Can you speak a little bit about the challenges and kind of coping mechanisms for the people who work in this field and do this really important work, and how you are able to cope with the violence and the trauma you encounter?
I'm not a practitioner, so
Oh.
I can take that one.
You know,
Absolutely.
Ms. Benavides is a graduate of our program, and she's been through my program so many times, and we have dealt with traumatic sessions, and we work with people within the program. You want to share some information, then I'll follow it up?
Ms. Benavides, I was gonna say representing my table.
Which is what we do with the program.
Yeah, I'd like to say that, I was listening to Mr. Muniz and talking about the counselors at the state prison, and I served a 5.5-year sentence, and not once did I see a counselor. And while I was there, looking for the programs, that every program that I applied for denied me all the time, and I couldn't get any help. So the word hope comes up for me, because the only person that would help me was Ms. Simon. And I was out for like 2 weeks, and my parole officer sent me to her program, and he told me, if Ms. Simon accepts you, then you're able to go there. Other than that, I don't know what to tell you. So I was like really close to losing hope. I'm 44 years old, and I'm a recovering addict now, and I've been clean since 2007. And I was an addict longer than I was clean and sober. And so being able to be in transitions, I think that it would be beneficial to have more transitions, like coming from the prison stuff, because Ms. Simon takes you as you are. And I know that as a woman, it's even harder. And I went to prison for a manslaughter charge, and the reason why they didn't want to help me is because I didn't have any drug charges. But the reason why I got a manslaughter charge is because I was out of my mind on drugs and alcohol. But because I had a manslaughter charge, they dropped my drug charges, because they could hold me on something more serious. And so therefore, nothing was available for me, and they said that I was a danger to my society, and prejudging me just because I had the label. And I was listening to the other gentleman, Mr. Newhouse, also speaking about, not everything's for everybody. And I think that and then it's going back to what Ms. Simon was saying about starting from a very young person, you never know what this person goes. I may not have had an anger problem, which I did, because that's what got me in a lot of my trouble. And it started from a very young girl. I started using drugs and alcohol when I was 10 years old. And so not knowing how to be a child, first of all, and then transitioning into being a teenager, and then transitioning to an adult, I never got there. And so I never had the guidance, not because I have a bad mom, but she was doing the best with what she had. And so being able to be with Miss Simon, and I had never heard it anywhere in my life, is like, you know, all you gotta do is change the way you think. It sounds simple, but at that moment I got like an aha moment, like, I never thought of that. You know, I never thought that if I change the way I think, things will be different. Because I always thought the same way, like, I gotta survive. And that's all that I have to do. And so, Miss Simon had told me one day, excuse me, I'm a little nervous, but Miss Simon had told me one day, and I get a little emotional because I had never heard it before. And she told me that I really care for you and I know you deserve better. I had never heard that before because I had either judges or somebody always telling me that I was a menace to society. But nobody really knew who I was, and Miss Simon took the opportunity to find out who I was. And I'm just an average person that got caught for my mistakes. And today, I say I'm fortunate that I did, because those that are still wandering around aimlessly without getting caught are living a poor lifestyle. And it's unfortunate that not everybody will accept somebody, because I had to do all the writing to programs on my own, and every program that every program that I wrote to denied me. And I went through Ms. Simon's program a few times, and gradually and slowly I learned how to change the way I was thinking about situations in life, that I wasn't a loser, and that I did have a reason to live, and that what I did was a mistake. And if I wouldn't have been on drugs and alcohol, that would have never happened. And so therefore, Ms. Simon told me that when I open transitions, she said, when I get the other office running, she says, you're gonna be my first employee. There was a little bit of, I don't believe you, because, you know, who do you believe when you've had the lifestyle that you live? But I was the first one to be hired, and I've been there ever since 2013, September 3rd. And I'm grateful to say that I'm the mentor in the class, and I get the opportunity to watch people come through and graduate all the time. The success rate is wonderful. I see a bunch of great people. I think that transitions would be a great program to have inside of prisons. And I think that without Ms. Simon, that, you know, I probably wouldn't be here today. And I'm glad to be here and to have the opportunity to be able to listen to different sides of everybody's story, because I only knew one side. But today I'm able to sit in this room like this without being judged. And so thank you for having me here today.
You're doing so well.
Question of the other panelists, including you, Warden. Now, every court in the state has a drug court. And we've had a drug court in all these counties for several years. And it was designed so that people who had straight possession cases, not sellers, but possessors and users, could, instead of getting convicted of possession of heroin, which was a felony, and possession of cocaine, which was a felony, a straight felony, no alternative misdemeanor sentence. Meth, a felony, it does have a misdemeanor sentence, but nobody ever gets it, and the like, could go through 18 months of drug treatment, counseling, take some classes, go to NA or AA, and at the end of 18 months, if they succeeded, the case is dismissed and the arrest record is erased, and you've got no record at all. It's a great program, and it worked. Now we got Prop 47. Prop 47 says everything's a misdemeanor now. Heroin, coke, meth, acid, whatever drug it is, if it's just possessed for personal use, it's a misdemeanor. And I'm wondering, does that close up the drug courts? People are going to say, well, hell, it's just a misdemeanor, it's court probation, fine. Why go to drug court and do the 18 months? I think it's going to...
Well, that was the argument the District Attorneys Association put forward before, you know, it was passed.
I never paid attention to DA, so I didn't
So,
listen to
yeah,
it.
so they did. And I've done a lot of work with drug court here in Monterey County. I don't think so. And I actually asked the judges in Monterey County Drug Court, are you getting fewer people coming in right now? Because, you know, they don't have this felony they need to take off. And it's the successes in drug court were the people who were motivated for other reasons than just taking off that felony. The ones who complete the program and, you know, go and attend their graduations, and there was one guy who followed through the whole program. it was more like the experience of you guys in transitions. They were ready to change something in their life. And so those people are still going to drug court. The ones that are finally ready to, you know, I'll do this. I mean, that's my experience, but I haven't counted the numbers yet. You know, it's so fresh and so new, but what I hear, we haven't seen a decline. I don't know if you've had a different experience.
No, I would really love transitions to be part of the system, working there with the lawyers, you know, with the DA, with the prosecutors and everyone, just to help with that part of it, because truly it's the whole family. The whole family. When one person has an issue, they all have an issue. So I believe that we need to do, and Kelly McMillan, our chief here, and I were on KIOM one night, and they were asking us about all these shootings and what to do about it. And I said, we need a full court press on with everyone involved to deal with this problem and issue. We need the families involved. We need the parents. And parents need support and help because sometimes they don't know how to deal with their children and others in their family. We need the criminal justice system to do their part. We need the court system to do its part. The court system needs support in the right amount of funding to help provide some of these services, because that's where these people are coming first now. These Prop 47 people are coming right there. So actually a couple of judges have asked me to come and sit in and talk to them about what we do, because they've heard about a lot of the people standing there saying, can I go to transitions, you know, when they're in there. They've heard about transitions. They've never experienced this, but they've heard of other people. And I would love to work with them.
Because the court used to have a couple of employees, great people,
Exactly.
who, what was her name, Lisa? There's two people who would, if you were in a felony court and you, judge said, all right, I'll give you probation, if you go to a live-in program, I'll let you out in 3 months. And a lot of people, needless to say, opted for that because they get out in 3 months and didn't really, weren't serious, but a lot of them were. And they would find new programs, live-in programs. But nowadays, most of the live-in programs are for profit. Beacon House, and Genesis House, and all that. They want to make a buck. And so all the drug court people, very few of them can get into, you know, the Salvation Army series programs that don't cost. And so it's the money-making programs that we're feeding off a drug court.
Well, let me tell you, there's something, and I don't know if anybody knows how drug courts work, because it's, as a criminal justice reporter, it was really fascinating to me, because you go into these rooms, and the prosecutor is not there trying to get more time for a person. The prosecutor, somebody from the DA's office, is actually sitting down with the defense attorney and with a social worker kind of person who's working on a treatment program, and they're actually all designing treatment for this person. Yeah. And the goal isn't to try to punish them, and the DA's office, you know, the guys there working with them to go, can we get them into Genesis House? Can we get to wherever they're going to go, whether it's for profit or not? They're working to figure out a very customized program for that defendant, and it just turns the whole justice system on its head, because the whole idea of our courts is adversarial. You know, the prosecutor fights the defense attorney, and this is the first time they don't do it.
The judge wants all these people to succeed so he can hold his graduation ceremony, which he loves to do. So he's trying, instead of saying, oh, you know, you gotta be punished because you're using dope, he's trying to get people to succeed in the program, stay the 18 months, stay the course, so he can hand them a certificate and shake their hands and give a little memento of their successful trip. It's like another world.
Yeah, I mean, there are people there hugging the judge. I mean, it's just like crazy.
So would you say that these courts are starting to treat it as a mental health problem, as opposed to just a crime, the drug use?
Yeah, not really a mental health problem. It's kind
all
of,
right, a health crime. I mean, a health problem.
It's a health. It's a health problem.
Behavioral.
Health problem, and addiction is a health problem as opposed to.
About half the cops I know have maintained for years that we ought to decriminalize all drugs. I'm talking about cops.
So this has that flavor.
Hmm?
It has that flavor.
Well, it does. In essence, it does do it. For possession cases, it does decriminalize it, because you are not only not a criminal, but it's the only crime on the books where your booking gets erased, it disappears. If you get a case, petty theft, you get it dismissed, you get a certificate of rehabilitation, 1203.4, which is a dismissal after successful completion of probation. Your rap sheet shows arrested petty theft, convicted petty theft, case dismissed, somewhere down the line. So anybody who can read a rap sheet knows that, well, you're a thief who got a case dismissed after he completed probation, and when he goes to get a job, he's no better off than if he, you know, just took the beef and didn't bother to get it dismissed.
You know, I worked with Judge Price a while.
I'm sorry, let's see if we can't accommodate some people in the audience. Questions?
Hi, my name's Yura. I'm also a student here. I have a question for the warden. I'm from Taiwan and my father is a warden. And he told me that in his 30 years in correction work, his biggest frustration is seeing people who got out of prison and then returned either to prison or to the system again. And that makes him feel like his work is not working, his job is not working, and even though there are programs within the prison that let inmates acquire certain skills, very few of them are able to apply those skills outside of the prison because the employers are simply too skeptical to hire them, or even their families can't take them normally. So, and also the correction institutions receive very little attention from the government. The resources are very limited. So I'm just wondering if you have the same kind of feelings and kind of frustration, or if not, what is the biggest challenge for you right now as an correction officer?
Well, thank you for that. I probably have more frustration if we don't do everything we possibly can do. One of the things about rehabilitation, and it's a strange word, it almost fits more the drug user, but if you've committed murder or child molestation, how rehabilitation were to technically apply in kind of the dictionary sense of the word isn't really clear for most correctional staff. And that's why I like the word transformation. Because if you are into stealing cars or into murdering people and now you're not, you're somehow transformed. And so that whole notion of not trying, by not giving inmates opportunities to change. So in terms of how I view it, these are my visual aids, I'm very limited here. The custody world is the world of survival and safety and security of an institution. And then we have another area that I call the magic. We call it creativity and innovation. I do, because we're not really allowed to call things in prison love and fear, because those are just not popular words for prison. We don't use happy either. You don't use that in a prison, right? I mean, happy, fear, love. You can't be scared. You can't show love. I mean, it's just, we're kind of limited. So we sort of transpose some words so that it can be a little better. We kind of deem it survival and creativity and innovation. And so what my mindset is that a prison has to be safe first in order to run any other programs. If all the officers left and just walked around the outside, none of our rehabilitative programs would walk in. No doctor, no mental health clinician, no educator, no vocational instructor, nobody would walk in if the officers aren't there. But the officers also have to have buy-in to get inmates to the rehabilitative programs. And officers can undo some of the magic that we're trying to perform. So for my sake, we don't pass out rehabilitation at the door. It's not received, it's achieved. And if a person elects to achieve, and it takes a lot of mentoring, to achieve success, then we have good outcomes. If we don't actually afford them that opportunity, then to me it's a huge failure. We haven't done everything that we possibly can. And so I have to kind of cut my losses, especially at a level 4 maximum security prison, at making sure that we give them every opportunity to change, give them every opportunity to have new thought processes. Research shows us that people have 60 to 70,000 thoughts per day, and 90% of them are the same ones you had yesterday. So for most people, when you wonder why nothing changes, I think that's why people are, you guys are all educated, and you're educating yourselves as students. Things are changing in your mind every day. These are, those synaptic connections and neurons firing together and wiring together and all that magic that happens in your brain while it changes. But if inmates don't make it to the programs, to the magic, then all they hear is from their homies, and the same rhetoric is discussed, and there's so much limited emotional intelligence in that group. And that group also is just trying to survive. So in survival mode, you're really in kind of a cortisol mode, physically speaking, and you can't be really that creative. And so that's why we leave it to the officers. And then we leave the people who do creativity and innovation to do the magic. And when we strike that balance, then I find peace in that. If we're not doing that, then I can't look myself in the mirror. I was sharing with Julia on the break. I met an inmate, I'll try to keep this really short because I know we're short for time. Went to San Quentin because my warden wanted to make sure I understood what programs really look like because we do a lot of lockdown. And I was really scared because everybody was just walking around like all by themselves and stuff. It was really like a campus field, and it freaked me out because we really have a lot of control at our institution. And I started kind of gearing down and kind of like the inmates. I quit posting myself up and my head on a swivel, and my cortisol level started to drop. And I ended up talking to an inmate, and I'll abbreviate the story to say he'd previously been at our prison. I was trying to differentiate what made the difference between what you were doing at our prison and all war mentality to where you are now at San Quentin level 2 and doing some really positive things. And he pointed a finger at me and he said, "You didn't offer me hope." And of course he wasn't speaking of me because I didn't know him. But I took that on. I owned the comment. His finger felt like a laser pointer and just went right, I mean honestly went through my heart. Both my parents are deceased, and I think they'd be very displeased that their son was doing something that didn't offer people hope. So if you were to go into my office today, the word hope is stenciled over my desk. And I walk in, I look at that word hope, and hope doesn't necessarily carry with it all the programs and services that are necessary. But sometimes if you can just offer hope, that's a good start. And so I guess what I would say is what would keep me up at night is if we weren't trying to get the right custody staff to do the right job in the right way, to get the inmates to the programs that are rehabilitative in nature so that the magic can happen. And once we're doing that, then I feel like we're doing our job. That kind of hand-in-hand team approach, that actually is how a prison should work. And when all those programs are up and functional, then me as a man, I can look myself in the mirror and know that I'm doing everything that I can. At least, because as one person, I can't talk to 3,500 inmates, I can't talk to 1,600 staff every day, but I'm more about systems and infusing the systems with that kind of hope. So I hope that wasn't too long of an answer. And I pray for your father.
So kind of just to piggyback off of what you were saying about hope, the warden was kind enough to give me and my boss a tour of Salinas Valley a couple months ago, and something that we talked about when we were there was the structural impediments that you have to offering people programs, because CDCR has a program where you can actually earn time off of your sentence for completing certain educational rehabilitative programs, but there are a lot of prisoners who are not eligible because of the nature of their crime. So I guess what I want to ask you, or maybe anyone else who could offer, is if you think if that was expanded, if more prisoners had the hope, if they believed, you know, if I complete these programs, maybe I can go home sooner, if you think that would help.
We're opening 3 programs as of June 1st. One of them is HVAC, the other one is electrical, and the other one is welding. And we have not had vocational programs for probably a decade.
But his prison is not like Soledad.
Oh, yeah, or
I
something,
mean,
yeah.
those guys know that it's very unlikely any of them are gonna get out. They're the max,
Yeah.
except for Pelican Bay, so, and Corcoran.
Yeah.
So
And then
they
just have a
they
little
know they're
line
not going
there.
anywhere, and they can go before the board with 18 degrees in welding, and then, you know, they're still gonna be in prison.
Mhm.
So he's got a different
Or for a
situation.
level 2 or a level 3, do you think that it would help if they had some kind of?
Well, actually, one of the things about level 4 inmates or lifer inmates is that they're sort of mentors themselves. If you had ran into a lifer inmate who sat you down and said, you have a great opportunity to get out of prison, and if you mess it up, I'm gonna break your legs, because that's actually what a friend of mine was told by a lifer inmate at CJ Soledad. And of all the programs that we had available to us to offer to the inmate, that lifer made the biggest impact. So one of the things that's really, you know, kind of out of the box is that the inmate population that's lifer isn't transient, and so if we could affect them, they're the ones who affect everybody who transiently goes through our institution. So yeah, maybe they're not going to get a date, maybe they're not going to get out, but our hopes is that if we affect them, they would affect others.
Let me speak to that really quickly, can I? That at CTF, where I have a loved one, there are programs, it's supposed to be a reentry hub, and the state has been lagging and lagging in getting these programs up and running. So it is the Life for Inmates who have started a series of incredible programs. There's at least, this is the North facility, there's at least 12 programs that they run themselves at night: anger management, restorative justice. They have a mentor program for the older lifers, spending 6 months of intensively working with young inmates who are about to be released, these younger guys in their 20s, so that the older guys can teach them what they've learned. I mean, this includes cognitive behavioral therapy and all kinds of stuff that they have been trained in or have trained themselves in, and they're inviting the community. I want to throw that out there, because they're trying to get more community groups to come in and train them to be trainers and get the programs going themselves. So they're taking it on themselves to do this, and it just, to me, that is very inspiring, because while we're waiting for the state to gear up, CTF has had the wisdom to encourage the guys and at least sponsor them and say, hey, keep doing it, because we're not doing it, but at least you are, and it's getting good results.
Okay. We have time for just one more question, so I know David's had his hand up.
Well, first of all, this is fantastic. I'm thrilled to have all of you here. I wish we had 6 hours or 10. There's so much, everybody has so many questions. I loved hearing your comment about how you changed. I want to hear about that sometime. And Julia talking about the hope, and Jacqueline, and your program sounds so spectacular. Here's my idea. And by the way, I run a nonprofit with the initials HOPE. But I like the idea of Jacqueline collaborating with the justice system and the judges and so forth. I think that's a great idea. I want to look at this a little bit bigger. You talked about self-esteem. I would love to see your program in schools. So,
Exactly, I hear you.
how could you do that?
I hear you. Well, actually, we are in schools. We volunteer to go into schools and juvenile hall, probation, because we need to get these kids, I'm not kidding, when they're in grade school. We have to start teaching them, like with our mentors in our program. We have them take their kids to Hartnell, to meet them at that institution instead of visiting that institution at the jail. Because you're creating those dendritic spines that we all have right now in our brains. We're all thinking about this session tonight, and we're developing a pathway of understanding of what this is about and how it can be so hopeful. It's those dendritic spines that we work with for everyone, from child to adult. There needs to be definitely more of this. Anyone can take our program. Our program signature, I'm a professor, I teach business and marketing. We provide wraparound reentry support services for parolees, probationers, veterans, sir, and the heart to serve. Anyone can come to our program. You don't have to, hurt someone, kill someone, or stolen something from somebody, because everybody can learn from this. And that's why we teach everyone, we teach and treat everyone with respect. When Ms. Benavides earlier started to stand up and say, I'm Ms. Benavides representing table 5, in all my programs, that's what I train my teachers to have them do. Treat everyone, Mr. or Ms. We come outside the box. Forget the box. We're outside the chip. We are doing things differently. And when we go into juvenile hall or to the high schools or the grade schools, we teach them the same thing. Being hopeful, looking at things that are right instead of things that are wrong first. And I agree with you. There needs to be much more of that. And I'd love to talk to you more, because hope is the word hope in every one of my offices.
Yes.
It's the words, and I've had the students, and yes, they're not inmates to me, they're students. Most of them are great artists. They prepare this artistic work, and it's everywhere. Thank you.
I'd like to take this just one step wider, even than David was talking about. I would be fearful that almost any prison sentence is a life sentence. When you look at what's happening to the world today, when unemployment is a necessary element of the kind of global economic system we have going, and there's so much going against anybody without the disability of having a prison record of any kind. So it's still an uphill business. But I think one of the aspects of rehabilitation that we need so desperately is a rehabilitation of the public of this country.
Yes.
You know, I was thinking about, you were talking about the kind of turnaround that we saw in the 70s. I was up to my eyeballs in that one. My father was president of the State Association of Juvenile Court Judges in Tennessee. My late husband was on the Senate staff then. They worked together and took what was a system just of tossing kids who'd gotten into any kind of trouble into jail. There's no distinctive facility for kids. And so they put together, under the label of rehabilitation system, a system of schools for kids who probably would not have stayed in schools in their home communities anyway, you know, and this was a way to really give them a start. It made a huge difference. But I saw that turnaround in the early 80s. I saw it day by day, you know, it was so dramatic and so devastating. And you know, at that point in time, I think most people would have felt, as I do now, that the very idea that we have to talk about a privatized prison system trying to get the benefits of, you know, such few benefits as there are for people who might be coming out. We shouldn't have a privatized prison system. The whole idea is it's just disgusting to me. But the country has accepted it. We've accepted so many things that are absurdly unacceptable.
Did you see on TV this week, Santa Cruz has a new special jail facility for drunk drivers, a boutique jail, because drunk drivers aren't really criminals, they're just citizens like you and me who had too much to drink. So they have a special facility. They don't have to sit on the floor of the holding cell for 8 hours or 20 hours to get booked. Take them in, book them, send them home as soon as they sober up. And Santa Cruz, being a forefront in penology, has this special boutique.
Yeah. Wow. What do you know?
That's a new one. Jail just for a specific crime.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, I think we can turn around, I really do. The pendulum is swinging in the right direction on this, but it's not just gonna happen automatically. We're up against a lot of pushback, and so we have to be vigilant about trying to keep this swing going back in the direction of the public interest. Anyway, with that, I'll say thank you once again for the Amnesty.
Thank you everyone again. Thank you for panelists for your time and being here. I think everyone wants to continue the discussion, and we just want to go in for another maybe 10 hours, but unfortunately we have to wrap up. Let's hope that this was just the first, and each one of us, when we leave, we actually continue thinking about it and tackling the issue more. And thank you again. Oh, and we have
several other wonderful events coming.
Yeah, we do actually. We have a lot of events. I would refer to the website or Facebook page because that's easy. It's Amnesty International at MIIS. But the next one for Amnesty International is actually April 7th. Congressman Sam Farr is going to be on campus talking about rehabilitation, specifically with Cuba and Latin America. And another event that is hosted by partner of Amnesty International is Ethics Conference that's going to be also on campus March 26th and 27th. It's Ethical Governance in the 21st Century, two-day conference covering different issues of policy world. If you're interested, please see us. We can give you some contact information. Thank you.